At 24,000 feet, the cabin doesn't explode. It opens. One moment, you're sitting in a seat, breathing recycled air, listening to engine noise you've stopped noticing. The next moment, the air is gone. Not moving. Gone. Your ears scream before your mind understands why. Your chest locks up, not from panic, but because your lungs suddenly don't know how to work. Wind tears through the cabin. Not loud, violent. Hands lose grip on everything: paper, bags, breath. Oxygen masks don't fall. They whip sideways. Useless. No one screams. Screaming requires air. A flight attendant takes one step forward, reaching for balance, and then there is an empty space where she was. No fire, no warning, no explosion. Just the impossible truth settling in: the plane is still flying, and the sky is inside it. This flight wasn't supposed to be remembered. It was a short hop between Hawaiian islands, the kind of route locals barely noticed anymore. People boarded in light jackets, folding newspapers under their arms, slipping into seats they'd sat in dozens of times before. Some had flown this route so often they no longer looked at the safety card. Others stared out the window, watching the ocean slide quietly beneath them: blue, endless, familiar. The aircraft was a Boeing 737. Trusted, understood, almost boring in its reliability. Pilots knew it. Mechanics knew it. Passengers trusted it without ever needing to say the word. That's how safety usually feels in America. Invisible when it works. Nothing about this morning felt rushed. The weather was calm. The sky was clear. The captain had flown this route more times than he could count. For most people on board, the flight was already over, at least in their minds. They were thinking about lunch plans, work calls, family dinners. And that's the detail almost everyone misses. Disasters rarely announce themselves. They don't arrive screaming. They slip in quietly during routine, when confidence is high and attention is low. Everything about this flight said you're fine. And when a system tells you that long enough, you stop listening for anything else. The first sign wasn't dramatic. It wasn't an alarm. It wasn't panic. It was a sound one passengers would later struggle to explain. Not a bang. Not an explosion. More like fabric tearing apart at impossible speed. In less than a second, the airplane changed shape. The ceiling didn't collapse. It vanished. An entire section of the fuselage peeled away cleanly, almost surgically, as if something that had been holding it together had simply let go. Wind flooded the cabin. People were forced back into their seats, breath stolen before fear could even arrive. Oxygen masks didn't lower. They were ripped sideways, violent, uncontrolled. And still, no one screamed. Shock does that. It delays understanding. In the aisle stood a flight attendant, Clarabelle C.B. Lansing. She had taken a step forward, not to investigate, not to react, to do her job. And then she was gone, not thrown, not struck, just no longer there. No one saw it happen. No one heard a scream. One moment there was a person. The next, only sky. The plane kept flying, and that was the moment something shifted. Because if a section of an aircraft could simply disappear without fire, without impact, without warning, then this wasn't chaos. It was something quieter, something structural, something that had been forming long before this flight ever took off. The aircraft didn't fail because something snapped. It failed because something had been tired for a very long time. This plane flew short routes, dozens of takeoffs and landings every single day. Each one stretched the metal skin slightly. Each landing flexed it back. Over years, that constant bending did something no explosion ever could. It taught the airplane where it was weakest. Tiny cracks formed around rivets, microscopic, invisible during routine checks. Not one crack mattered, not 10, but thousands, spreading quietly, connecting like sentences no one was reading. Maintenance crews followed the rules. That's the uncomfortable truth. Inspections were logged, procedures were checked off, but the rules were written for airplanes that aged slowly, not for aircraft that lived their entire lives in repeated stress cycles. The danger wasn't ignored. It was misunderstood. Engineers later called it multi-site fatigue cracking, a technical phrase that hides a brutal reality. When enough small failures exist at the same time, a structure doesn't break. It unzips. And here's the part that still makes experts uneasy. There was no single moment to stop it. No alarm loud enough to matter. No warning light dramatic enough to save the day. Just numbers on a spreadsheet, slowly drifting toward a place no one had modeled correctly. People like to believe disasters come from bad decisions. This one came from reasonable decisions, repeated for years. Trust in data. Trust in experience. Trust in a system that had always worked before. Until it didn't. Because systems don't collapse when they're weak. They collapse when they've been strong for too long, and nobody updates the assumptions underneath them. That's the signal this accident left behind. And it's why the most dangerous failures rarely look dangerous right up until the moment they can no longer hold together. Inside the cockpit, the captain couldn't see forward. The windshield was gone. Wind filled the space where the sky had been, loud enough to erase thought. Instruments shook. The controls felt wrong in his hands. Instinct took over. Years of muscle memory. Pressure without panic. He flew the airplane by feel. In the cabin, passengers held on to whatever they could reach. Armrests, seat frames, each other. Some were bleeding, some were frozen. Some stared straight ahead, already convinced this was the end. One survivor would later say, "I didn't feel fear. I felt acceptance." The plane descended slowly, damaged, still flying. When it finally touched the runway, relief didn't fill the cabin. Silence did, the kind that comes when people realize they're still breathing. 65 people walked away. One did not. Clarabelle Lansing's body was never recovered. There was no funeral, only an absence that never closed. Her name wasn't spoken in headlines, not in reports, but quietly by the people who flew with her. There were no celebrations that day, no victory speeches, just people who went home changed, carrying a sound they would never forget. The sound of air rushing in where safety used to be. This is the cost systems never list. Not numbers, not statistics, but the space someone once occupied and never returned to. After this flight, aviation quietly changed. Inspection rules were rewritten. Fatigue was no longer a footnote. It became something engineers had to look for even when nothing appeared broken. They stopped searching for a single crack. They began looking for patterns. Small failures, scattered and ordinary, hiding inside systems that still felt strong. But the deeper lesson wasn't technical. It was human. We are good at noticing explosions. We are terrible at noticing erosion. We respond to alarms, not to slow drift. When something works every day, it earns our trust. And slowly, trust replaces attention. That's what this accident exposed. Not recklessness, not neglect, but confidence built on assumptions that no one thought to revisit. The plane didn't fail in a storm. It failed during routine. And that's why this story doesn't stay in Hawaii. It exists anywhere systems age quietly. Anywhere repetition dulls vigilance. Anywhere it's always been fine becomes policy. The most dangerous moment isn't when something breaks. It's when everyone believes it won't. The roof didn't come off this plane because someone ignored a warning. It came off because nothing felt urgent. Nothing exploded. Nothing burned. The system did exactly what it had always done, until one ordinary moment revealed how fragile normal had quietly become. That's the part most people miss. Danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives as routine, wrapped in confidence, reinforced by years of things going right. So here's the question this flight leaves behind: if failure grows slowly, quietly, invisibly, how many systems around us are already past the point where a warning would matter? And when the air starts rushing in, would we recognize the sound in time?